Hey, how's everybody doing? Okay, so here's me messing around with the yard office roof with a bit of weathering. Look, there's so many good techniques and methods of doing this out there. Choose your poison, as they say, right? I've been doing this a long time, and I used to use oils, but since acrylics have come out, like these Vallejos, which I tend to shy away from because I'm sort of old school, but hey, all the new paints they have out now, there's no fumes. It's a clean, non-toxic environment. The pigments are really good in these. If you learn how to use them, they work really well. But I like to use them all. I like to use oils and acrylics together if I can. So like in this case here, you can see that this roof was first painted, remember, dark olive. And then what I did was I shot, light blue or a variation of, nothing fancy, no particular color, just a blue that I had around. And then I sort of shot overspray and coats of blue over top of the black, green, or olive, whatever you want to call it. There's black in there as well. So you get all this different kind of shades, random shades in here, right? And then after that, I took some really thin white in the airbrush and toned it down a bit. You just go with feel. You say, oh, okay, that looks good. Then shut her down and put it aside. And then I dull coated it. Now, the dull coat by Testors I really like. I'll just let you know. Some of you out there probably really like it as well. Since they ran out here in Canada, I've had to order some of it. But now I've tried the Tamiya Clear Flat. And it's not exactly the same, because then you're running into reactions when you put it over top of, let's say, like Vallejo paint, and then you use some Microsol or something, and then you shoot Tamiya Clear Flat, and there's a blemish, then I like to stay with the products that I'm confident with, but in this day and age, you gotta improvise and be willing to take a risk and experiment a little bit. So anyway, you can see with the water just sort of doesn't really flow well on here. It just sort of beads off, and that's okay, right? Because when you start to add paint, like here's a bit of pale green. Here I'm just going to dab a few random spots around. You end up with this water here. There's just burnt umber and pale green. That's it. You don't need olive because you can make olive from the both of them, but and then you can use the different tones as you play around. So anyway, you just dab a bit of paint and then let it run down into the gutter here like that if you want. Try not to use too much at first, and then just move it around. Just have fun with it. I like to just sit back and relax and just have fun with the paint. This method here that I'm using is called wet on wet. It's a traditional watercolor method that's been around for the ages. It's where you wet the paper down and then you use wet paint basically, and you dab in strong pigments to areas, and then you just move it around. You keep moving it around, right? And try to knock down some of the hard edges, kind of like oils in a way, but water's more forgiving. You can wipe it off, and so you see all this buildup down here. I mean, that might not look bad. Like when that dries, when the water evaporates from there, like you'd be surprised at the effect that might leave behind. It won't look like it does now, but you might like it. So, and then like here's some pure burnt umber, and I'll just tuck it up underneath this roof cap here, and you can see how it runs down. Like just be a little bit random with it, like that. These roofs, these metal roofs, you just drive around the countryside and you can just have a look around. They're in every different kind of shade and color, and weathered grays and raw umbers and greens. Okay, and then you can let it run into the eave there. Like when that dries in the eave, like you might really like that, right? And it's an effect that you can't particularly pick out with paint. You just let the water work for you. That's what I try to do. I do this on rolling stock as well, and locomotives too. Just put water. The water's not going to hurt the model, right? And if you don't like it, if you keep it wet, you can still move it around and wash some of it away too, right? So you can, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's this kind of cracking and kind of mottling on the top here. Now, I don't know how that came about. And, you know, as they say, the longer you do this kind of thing, some of the advantages of the more experienced modelers is only that they make their mistakes work for them. Right? Everybody has the potential and skill to do this kind of thing. You just got to put the time in. And you'll see, you know, little, oh, look at that. Wow. Well, I like that. Like, you never thought or planned it that way, but you make your mistakes work for you, right? Especially in this weathering game, you can get really, really nice effects. So yeah, you can see here how it's sort of built up and pooled up along here. So I'm going to leave that, right? I'm just going to let that water evaporate. I'm going to see what that looks like. You don't want to overdo it either. Like, you take a strong dip there and just give it one little stab. You can see what it does. You know, there might be more rust seeping out from underneath there from the heat, and you know, heat causes rust as well as moisture, right? And you want to be careful that you don't do too, like, you don't move it around too much, because then you'll just end up with mud, as they say. And mud is where all the paint blends together. You don't have any distinction between the colors, right? So yeah, I kind of like what's going on there. I'm going to leave that. The other side is similar, but it's random. And then on the top of the little potbelly stove, there's some white kind of mottling. I didn't use any white paint, but that's part of the white overspray from before that you couldn't really see now coming out. See, so it's all about layers, right? Forgive me for those that already know this, but for those that don't, we want to encourage that, right? And just share some of these things. They're not trade secrets. It's all been done before. Everything's been done before under the sun, as they say. It's just a matter of taking advantage of the community that we have and sharing ideas and stuff. So yeah, so that took very little paint. In fact, you end up wasting more than you actually use on the model. So that's, I think I'll just live with that right there. I think I'll just leave that now and then have a look at the building. Just shift this over. And let's have a look at the building. So I'm going to start on the back side here. I'm just going to take some of this muddy kind of water. I'm just going to just lay it on. You know, throw as much as you want on. Like, who cares, right? Like, it's just water. I like to have it flat so it sits on there for a bit, and then you can tilt it down and run the water down. So I'm going to start with a bit of green again, because you get green and moss. And if that's too much, don't worry about it. Just keep it wet. Keep it wet until you're happy, and then set it aside. You'll be really pleased and surprised at some of the results. Like, see how it's pooling up down here and building up like it normally would anyway? Right, with the blend, see how it's blending in? Right, it's probably the shady side of the building, right? So just get lots of water. Don't be afraid, water's free, right, as they say. Well, in some places it seems to be of greater supply than others, but so that, and then I'm going to add a little touch of raw umber there. Just let the water do its work, right? That's what I like to do. I like to weather like this. You can come at it with oils later if you want, but don't be afraid to. I mean, I used to be really locked on oils, but with especially these Vallejo, you know, they have really good pigment, and or any acrylic actually you can use. You don't have to use Vallejo. Yeah, just learn to paint and weather wet on wet. Lots of water. Like I say, you can wash it all away too, right? If you don't like it. You can do this with isopropyl alcohol with an airbrush too with Tamiya. If you put down a Tamiya flat coat, let's say, and then seal it with dull coat, so that when you spray isopropyl onto the first layer of to me it's protected. You can spray over dull coat, other acrylic, and you can just spray on a bunch of random earth tones and raw umbers, and then take your airbrush with just straight isopropyl and just start shooting straight isopropyl onto the model and washing it away, actually like a mini pressure washer. And you would be really surprised at some of the effects that you're going to get from mistakes, right? You don't want to think it through too much. It's you know, just have fun with it. You know, it's some of the best weathering I've seen, and I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't be methodical and have method, but let your mistakes work for you. Don't be afraid to, you know, mess around a bit and just have fun with it. You know, and then after this is dry, if you think it's too strong, just take a lighter color in your airbrush and put a slight overspray on it, like a really light white or buff. As I mentioned earlier, buffs are a great color for weathering and toning down stronger colors. Right. Yeah, so that's, I don't know how that comes out on the camera, but have fun, move the color around, just keep moving it around. Try not to turn it all into mud. Leave some stronger, like take some stronger and just, you know, stab in a mark like that, right? Okay, so thanks for tuning in, and have fun. Go model, go paint. Have a great day.